All right. Well, welcome to the Plant Orlando podcast, our first episode, our inaugural episode. I'm excited to have a couple of good friends on the podcast with me today. I've got Melo Saval, pastor at One Family Church in Apopka, and I've got Mike Graham, who's the director of the TGC's Keller Center and also the co-author of Great Dechurching and a member at Orlando Grace Church. Guys, thanks for being on here today.
Thank you, brother. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So I'd love to just start off and just hear from each of you. How many years have you each been in Orlando, and what is something that you love about Orlando?
I'll
It'd
kick
be
it off.
good,
I'll kick it
Gabe.
off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been in Orlando since 2007. This is before meeting my wife. Just kind of came to Orlando from South Florida. Honestly, looking for just a new beginning, a new start from just kind of a rough upbringing, being raised in South Florida. Ended up being saved in Orlando through college ministry, and then getting married, meeting my wife, getting married, and raising my family here. Love Orlando because, man, it is to me just a beautifully diverse city with so many it's just a city that has so much to offer for raising a family, great for just developing a future and just trying to establish some roots somewhere. I know that it's not always been a place where people consider it as a place to just establish some roots and be here long term. But I just fell in love with Orlando just because of the capacity to, the ability to see, man, I can see myself raising a family and having a future here in this beautiful city. I'm not a Disney guy, so that doesn't do anything for me. I just love the diversity of not just people, but what it has to offer.
So I've been here. I moved here in 1986, so lived here for the better part of 40 years. A lot of things to love about Orlando. Would echo everything that Melo said. You know, it's just a great place it's just a very family-centric city. There's plenty of things to do, plenty of parks, lots of entertainment, but, you know, also just from a business standpoint, there's all sorts of different industries that are here, whether that's tech or aerospace or the service industry, all of those different things. It's a great place to live. You meet all sorts of really interesting people. And again, it's just a very family-friendly city.
It's awesome. Well, this podcast, the Plant Orlando podcast, is a part of the Orlando Church Planting Network, which is a hyper-local network where we want to see gospel saturation in Greater Orlando. We want to see more healthy missional churches planted throughout Central Florida so that we can reach and impact the lostness in our city. We started 4 years ago, and I love a good backstory. And so for this first episode of our season of this podcast, I wanted to really give the backstory of OCPN and talk about why we started the Orlando Church Planting Network. So, Mike, I want to start with you. And if you'll take us back to 2018, 2019, and give us a picture of the conversations that started emerging and kind of that backstory to the Orlando Church Planting Network.
Yeah, so there was there were a lot of kind of disparate silos of kind of pastors and a lot of different conversations kind of happening in the city. And so, you know, definitely a couple different meetups of whether it was the Gospel Coalition's Orlando regional chapter or the Acts 29 church planter gathering or a couple different things. There were a lot of different things kind of, you know, going on. And there were a handful of people that kind of transcended those different groups. I was one of the people that was kind of in the Venn diagram of a couple different of those different meetups. And so, you know, we wanted to see what it would look like if we did a better job of pooling our resources, those resources being both intellectual and analytical, financial, training, all those different kinds of things. What would it look like instead of like all these different churches, that care about church planting that maybe wouldn't necessarily have a high probability of success of planting a church out of their church? What if it looked like if we did more of that church planting together as a kind of looser network of churches? And so, you know, everything from vetting, training, developing financial models, looking at different areas of the city that seem to be underserved in terms of, you know, number of churches per people, areas of the city that were growing rapidly. So we ended up doing a lot of analysis to that end, and Gabe and I ended up writing a report for that we shared throughout the entire city through, pastors throughout the whole city. That was basically a church planting report of, hey, these are the fastest growing areas. These are the most underserved areas. We also gave some analysis in that report to the end of how and why there's kind of 4 different types of Orlando, and what each of those different types of Orlando kind of look like from a cultural and exegetical standpoint, and kind of what speaks to each one of those different Orlandos, from both on the negative side, from the idols, on the positive side, what facets of the gospel seem to speak most powerfully for those people, what drives people to want to move to each of those different parts of the city, and what types of churches and what types of contextualization are best needed for those respective contexts. So yeah, that was just some of the background, really wanting to dramatically increase the probability of efficacy of successful planting of local churches. Tired of seeing so many churches that wanted to plant churches try and fail.
Mhm.
There's whole parts of Orlando that are known as like church plant graveyards, where so many churches try to plant a church in a particular area. Identifying really kind of one of the reasons why that was failing is there was just a lack of coordination between churches. And hey, if you have 3 churches that have all identified that they want to plant, in the exact same area, well, maybe it's a better idea for you to, instead of planting 3 separate churches, to plant one that has a near perfect chance of success, and each of those churches kind of, siphoning off X number of people to go and help with those launch teams. So that was just some of the, some of the reasons, kind of the why behind the what. Kind of tired of seeing church plant success rates be lower than other metro areas, and what can we do about that to kind of work together instead of at cross purposes unintentionally. So yeah, it's been really fun, and it's been really cool to see the fruit of, hey, here's what happens when we zoom out, we take a kingdom mindset to things, and we try to, put the gospel first in the city.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, Mike, that report was so helpful. And a couple of my takeaways from that report was, one, we need to see more churches planted in Orlando. Two, there's not a lot of collaboration and coordination happening between churches. And so what can we do about it? And then as we begin to have conversations about what it could look like to start something together, to collaborate together. Mello, you started talking about planting. You and your wife were having conversations and dreaming, and 2018, 2019, and then 2020, you stepped into the Summit Collaborative to get trained. Tell us about that, about your journey towards planting in Orlando.
Yeah, so we at the time of we started to feel the push towards, okay, I think now is the time to begin preparing for planting. I was introduced to the Summit Collaborative right around COVID, so it was a interesting dynamic, because why would you want to plant a church when the world is trying to shut down? So, but what was great about it is that they offered this kind of hybrid preparation thing, so I could be here in Orlando and then travel over to North Carolina to just get some training. And they supported and wanted to kind of put their money where their mouth is. The collaborative network was really just about different kinds of churches coming together and being intentional about reaching where they are, and then just wanting to support other plants doing the same thing. And so we began to kind of do some back and forth travel, but start thinking about what does it look like for us to really love where we are. And one of the things about Orlando is it's so big. It's not a place that you need to, or our desire to plant did not come from a very romanticized, like, I just drove by these streets and I saw this billboard, or I went to this particular area and I just said, we've got to be here. We just looked at we considered some of the things that Michael Graham was just mentioning. There's just incredible need here. And we just thought, if planting is what you want to do, you just can't go wrong in a city like Orlando. Just pick somewhere and just start engaging the city. And so that's kind of how we kind of began our journey and
Yeah.
preparing, and we've been in the game ever since.
Yep. Yeah. We joke that, you could in many ways, throw a rock in any direction in Orlando, and that's a good spot to plant,
Yeah.
just because there is a great need here. I mean, just in the just in the last 5 years since 6 years since you wrote that report, Mike, since we wrote that report, the metro has gone from 2.5 million to 3 million, which is crazy, and then it's projected to go to 4 million. And so our church planting has not kept pace with that population growth, not to mention the fact that Orlando is in the top 10 unchurched and dechurched cities. So you put all those things together and there's a huge need. So around that time, I came across the Houston Church Planting Network. And actually the next episode we're going to do on this podcast, I'm going to talk with Chad Clarkson about the HCPN story and what God's done in Houston. But we began learning from them. And then in 2022, we launched our first cohort, trained 3 guys. And then the next year, trained 3 more guys. And then the next year, 6 guys. And now this year, 5 guys. And so each year, we're just trying to build this pipeline of leaders that are being trained in planting churches. And our hope is that 10 years from now, we look back and see, 50, 60 new, healthy, sustaining, thriving, multiplying churches in our city. And that movement would continue to grow for the 10 years beyond that and 10 years beyond that. So I would love to hear from you guys. Let's maybe go back to you, Mike. And what are you guys seeing now in Orlando? Here we are, really 7 years since you wrote that report. And those first conversations that we were having in 2019, what are you seeing now in terms of planting in Orlando? Is there still a need for more churches? And what are you seeing?
Yeah, so there's a tremendous need for more churches in Orlando. In many ways, the Orlando metro area kind of mirrors the size and population of Los Angeles metro area, whatever LA Metro was about 10 years ago. The difference, though, between Orlando and the LA Metro area is a couple things. One, LA Metro is bounded by all sorts of geographical things. Orlando really isn't bounded by that. There's not really things that are there to really stop the continued growth of the city. In addition to that, there's large pieces of land, particularly in the southeast quadrant, the Deseret Farms owned by the Latter-day Saints, that is being progressively sold off. And when you look at that land is closer to Orlando International Airport than Winter Park. And so you know that those areas are going to grow very rapidly as homes and businesses, begin to go on those things. The city continues to grow, at least 1,500 people moving here a week. Sometimes it's even faster than that. So in terms of those trends, those things continue. The state continues to be decently well run in terms of its revenue. As a state, we have no state income tax. So these are attractive things that bring people who want to move here and businesses that want to open here. All of those things continue. Everything pertaining to the entertainment industry continues to grow. You have, the Epic Universe at Universal that just opened here in the last year. You have all sorts of billions of dollars of investment from the Walt Disney World Corporation into their theme parks. 90 million plus people visit Orlando on an annual basis. It is the #1 tourist destination in the world. So all of those dynamics have the infrastructure, the economic development, people moving here, and everything that just kind of trickles down from those things. In addition to that, the road infrastructure of the city continues to grow and evolve. Not just, those aren't limited to the advancements on the interstate, but all sorts of other kind of outer ring things and toll roads and the like. So all of that infrastructure just kind of continues to grow. So everything kind of looks up and to the right in terms of economic development, expansion of the city, proportional expansion of infrastructure. The stability that's been there in local governments has actually been very high compared to other cities. Everything just kind of seems to be humming along in the city. The city continues to, it's still figuring out its identity as a city, and that's what you'd expect from a place that didn't have many people here 70 years ago. But all of those things are really interesting, really exciting. There's not a dull moment in the best way in terms of how to think about these things. And then as it pertains to church planting, these things are accelerated. The probability of success of church plants is now higher here because of this additional infrastructure of the OCPN. There is a greater sense of, I think, collaboration and kingdom mindedness among the pastors here in the city, as we all recognize that we have a ton of work to do. And even if like everything that we do, with OCPN and stuff is wildly successful, we will still be behind
Yeah.
in terms of the rate of growth of the city. And so, even if we're like the most successful possible, we have more growth and more needs than what we can possibly meet. So, if you're listening to this, please be praying, if God is maybe calling you to be connected to some of these things that we're doing and talking about here.
Yeah. 100%. Thanks, Mike. Yeah. Mello. Here we are 7, 8 years later from those early conversations. You planted, your church is now 4 years old. You took what you learned from Summit Collaborative and not only planted a church that's now established, but you're also serving on the board of OCPN, helping us to train up church planters. What do you see in terms of where we're at now and where we need to go in terms of church planting in Orlando?
Yeah. So if you consider everything that you just heard from Michael, the reality is, as there's great things happening in our city, people are coming here. This is more and more becoming a place that, we are trying to figure out our identity, but instead of being known as this transient place that no one sticks around in, you now realize that, okay, people see, like how we saw earlier on. I see a future here, and I think that that's going to become more of a reality, which means incredible opportunity for kingdom advancement. This is a place that's while there's exciting things happening, there's incredible opportunity out there for future planters to recognize that this isn't a place where you can I drive by different places and I do see some churches and I'm wondering, will there be opportunity? No, there's more opportunity than what we can handle, and it takes different types of churches to reach all different kinds of people. And the interesting thing is we have different kinds of people coming into the city, right? And so we've just got to be we've got to be prepared to engage and to not just be so focused on where are the people, but be thinking about where the people are actually going and they're coming here. And so we want to meet them where they're heading. And I just think that there's no longer or should no longer be a fear of whether or not. I'm not sure if there's people that we can engage or the opportunity. I think it's here, and we just need to be excited about that. Our church plant is in a place called Apopka, Florida, and so it's part of the greater Orlando area. And so there's all these places: Winter Park, you have Winter Garden, Claremont. These are all these little greater Orlando communities that still identify, depending on where you go. We'll say we're from Orlando because you might not have heard of Apopka, but we're connected. Plenty of opportunity. I just think we just need to if you're considering planting, I'm just going to tell you now, book your flight to Florida and then just make it a one-way trip.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you guys have kind of answered this, but is there anything else that Mike, you would say to someone who's a potential planter, why they should consider Orlando as a place to come plant?
Well, I just think that this is no different than just economics. The supply of people or the demand from people outweighs the supply. And so like the probability of planting a church here successfully is pretty high as long as you have a clear sense of where you should be planting and a clear internal and external call to be a church planter. And as long as the people and institutions that are around you are supportive of, that internal and external call. So, I mean, I really don't think it's any more complicated than that. We need more churches here, and we don't have enough church planters to go and plant them. And it's also, I think, objectively a great place to live and a great place to work. The people who are here are just there's just some of the best people that you'll ever meet with in the world, and the entire world is here. A 7-hour flight, 7-hour flight, and you're in Europe. A 7-hour flight, and you're in Central or South America. A 2-hour flight, and you're in the Caribbean. So that's basically 3 continents, really within a half day of your fingertips here. And I don't know, the whole world is here. There's hundreds of people groups, that are here. So, I mean, So the fields are white. Come
That's right.
come get
That's
the
right. That's
harvest.
right.
Get in line.
That's right.
Yeah. Speaking
That's
of
right.
that, I moved to Orlando in 2007. One of the things that got me excited about moving to Orlando was there was actual a National Geographic article that came out that year in about Orlando, and one of the big themes of that article was how diverse Orlando uh, was and is becoming, and it talked about how many different languages were spoken in some of the high schools, and just different things. And so, personally, that got me excited to move to Orlando. And since moving here and being here, these 18, 19 years doing ministry in the city, I've definitely seen that there are people from all kinds of backgrounds, whether transplants from the Northeast or from the Midwest, but then people from every country in Central and South America, people from the Middle East and Asia that are here, people from Europe. There is a real diversity of backgrounds and languages and cultures. And so that's the context we get to do ministry in. And so we need lots of different types of planters, people representing those different backgrounds, able to reach those different language groups and backgrounds. So yeah, that's a big thing for me. What about for you, Mello? Why would you say someone that's a called to plant a church should consider Orlando to plant a church?
So again, all of the reasons that we just mentioned, but in addition to that, those who are here and are committed to the city love the city. And so you need to also know that there are other churches here who are committed to reaching the lost, who have been doing some work prior to your arrival. We're so glad you're on the way, and we're so glad that you want to get in the game and engage with us as we seek to advance God's kingdom. Get to know some of the other churches. We have a network of incredible churches. And that's, again, one of the reasons I love the city is that I'm just grateful for the quality of leaders who are here that are committed to doing what we're talking about with OCPN. And so if you're looking not just for for the fact that it's just a great city, bring your family. You're going to love it here if for nothing else. But if you're going to plant
Mhm.
churches, and as you discern your call and as you consider how God is leading, recognize that there is a great wealth of solid leaders and pastors here that you can come alongside of, learn from, and that we can collaborate together to reaching our city. So that's another benefit that I want to make sure that we throw out there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, one of the things that um not every city has this. Increasingly more and more cities are trying to, churches within a lot of different cities are trying to go after this, but this idea of a gospel movement in the city, we owe a lot to Tim Keller for this language of seeing a gospel ecosystem, seeing a gospel movement in a city, that you want to see new churches, you want to see, specialized ministries, you want to see disciple making, and engagement in serving the city. And we have a lot of those ingredients here in Orlando. They just haven't been brought together in a collaborative way until recently. And I feel like in the last few years, since we started OCPN, we're just beginning to see the tip of the iceberg of what could happen in our city if some of the great resources we have in our city, because although we need more churches, we also have some great resources like Crew and different parachurch ministries that are headquartered here in Orlando, things like Ligonier and Reformed Theological Seminary. And so there's some great institutions and great churches and great organizations. We just haven't worked together well a lot in the past. And so any thoughts that you guys would add to wanting to see gospel movement in our city? Mike, any thoughts on that? And then Mello, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's a place of opportunity, and so the more that we work closely together, the more that we share, you know, the body of Christ functions like the body of Christ, and the more that our various institutions intertwine their the roots of their trees, like it's just the sky's the limit in terms of what's possible when we work together.
Yeah, and I'll just say we're not interested in any longer having any kind of reputation of being the church planters graveyard. So
Right.
we want to make sure, and I just want to encourage whoever's watching this and is considering Orlando. And we can cut this out if it's unnecessary, but I'll just say that this is, while there's all this growth and opportunity, this is not a place where, we would be very excited about. Just this is not necessarily for platform and for like let build your own kingdom. Everything we're talking about is for the good of our city. And so do
Yes.
do the city a favor. If you're here and you're looking for, oh, where's the next wave that I could just jump onto? No, we say that there's opportunity, but opportunity for the kingdom, not for your kingdom. And so that's what we're excited about. I'm excited about partnering with other churches that just want to see the gospel advance. And so I just always got to throw that out there when you're talking to some potential planters out there, to just make sure this is about Jesus, His kingdom, and that's what excites me the most.
Awesome. Okay, well, and wrapping up here, I'd just love to hear from you guys each. If you could share, what's one or two things that you're excited about seeing God do in 2026? Maybe it's in your ministry, in your personal life, or just in general in the city of Orlando. What are some things you're excited about for 2026?
So from my seat working at the Keller Center, and our job as a division of TGC is we're essentially like the R&D department of the Gospel Coalition. And so there's just a lot of resources that we're creating, I think, here this year that are going to help people accelerate their ability to communicate the gospel and help their ability to tell the gospel in more comprehensible and more compelling ways. So I just look forward to, being able to resource pastors and lay people at churches all around the world with resources that help them communicate that Jesus story better.
I love that. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, looking forward to some of those resources. This year, I'm just seeing more and more excitement with younger people who want to get
Mm.
engaged and want to be involved. And I'm just looking forward to being able to just be a church that can equip and really help people be prepared for some real good long-term ministry. And so when I hear what Michael just talked about, I'm sure that some of those resources will involve just living, how do we equip people in a world of, AI and things like that. So just excited about just the next like younger people really just being excited about being involved and wanting to get engaged.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited as well for the continued growth of the Orlando Church Planting Network, and just seeing each of the individual churches that are involved in the network really, over the last 4 or 5 years, regaining a passion and a zeal for evangelism. I think this year and in the coming years, we're going to see fruit from that. So I'm excited this year to see how God continues to move as our churches press into evangelism, and then continue to see how this pipeline grows for OCPN. We've got 5 guys in the finishing right now, and I've got 7 or 8 guys that are interested in the finishing for this next September already. And so excited to see how those churches get planted and bear fruit. And, as 7 church plants turns into 12 church plants, turns into 20 church plants. And then, like I said earlier, 10 years from now, we look back and see 50, 60, 70 new healthy, missional, multiplying churches in our city. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for being on today. It's been a great conversation, and look forward to more future conversations on this podcast.
Thank you, Gabe.
Guys.
Appreciate you, brother. Thank you.